Hi, everybody, and welcome to McCall, Idaho, from the Geological Society of America Penrose Conference. The date is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 at 4:20 p.m. Mountain Time. We're live right now, and we have 54 at the moment. And since we just began this live stream, a bunch more will be coming in. Garrett, the Dutch night owl from the Netherlands, reports that it's 5 by 5. I just catch out of the corner of my eye. And so I got all sorts of things going here. Let me pause that. Let me get the Etch-a-Sketch going. And most of you are watching this in replay. Thank you for joining us for the replay. And we will begin this program in 9 minutes. 9 minutes from now. You can skip ahead 9 minutes to the beginning of the program. And for those of you watching live, that means we're going to start at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. I see a few more 5 by 5s. That makes me happy. Give me a second, would you? Thank you for joining us today. $172 watching. It is magic. It is just magic. Etch-a-Sketch is the Insta360 camera working? Is it tracking? It is not. That's okay. That's okay. Okay. Don't like that. So let's move me over here. And yes, guest is going to be here. So that's right. So let me bring you over. Oh boy. I guess let me come over to you. Okay. Let's say hi to a few of you, and then I'll wait until the top of the program to explain what the plan is today. It's a loose plan, of course. Personal hotspot nearby. I don't need it. Use the Starlink Wi-Fi. Am I on today's program? Give me a second, please. Thank you. Come on, boy. You can do this. You can do this. Okay, we are live. Let's say hi to a number of you. Boy, I'm really uphill here. Okay, I got it. Where are you viewing from? Langford, UK. Kentucky. Nice, France. Hello, Steve. The Metau, that's David. Port Orchard, Washington. Bob and Kathy up in Coopville, Washington. John's in Media, Pennsylvania. Gary is in Hood River, Oregon. Chuck is in Costa Rica. Fairbanks, Alaska, that's Don. Kennewick, Washington. Spokane, Snohomish, Washington. Cincinnati, Ohio. Silver City, New Mexico. Winter Gardens, South Carolina. No, Southern California. Youssef is viewing from Morocco. Hello, Youssef. Puyallup, Arnhem, Netherlands. Statesboro, Georgia. Today's episode is hopefully going to have an international flavor from my end, but we'll see if that happens or not. Statesboro, Georgia. Medina, Ohio. Humid Billings, Montana. Grass Valley, Oregon. Riverton, Wyoming. Sunny San Diego, California. Hello from the full of wildfires in Greece. Hang in there, Yorgos. Kirk's in Philomath, Spokane, Washington. Northern Exposure, Roslyn, Washington. Kelowna, BC. Jim, please hang in there. Gainesville, Florida. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Let me come down to live. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tim is in Tyler once again. Thanks for watching again, Tim. And Hard Rock Girl 58 in Dorset, UK. Dallas, Texas. Emeryville, California. Riverton, Illinois. Teza is in Hobart, Tasmania. Volcanerd in Tokyo, Japan. Rotterdam, Netherlands. Boise, Idaho. Warm Lake, Idaho. Powell is watching from Warsaw, Poland. Ottawa, Canada. Sydney, Australia. Hi, David. Love is the Answer is reporting in from Muskoka, Ontario, Canada, I believe. It's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Kentucky, reports Randy. Tualatin, Oregon. Arlington, Nebraska. Silver Lake, Oregon. Nashville, Tennessee. I'm kind of half stalling, and I'll explain why in a bit. But I'm just continuing with the roll call here. We are live. We're up to 255 people watching. Got some buffering. Oh, that's nice. Our first report of buffering. I'm not going to screw with the camera today, although I'm not sure that it's moving the camera. That's the problem. Why not? Let's get into the technology wrap. So I think I'm improving. I think I'm practicing, and I think I'm improving. Oh, really? Am I? Well, okay. First of all, I'm underneath a tree. So the camera is under shade. The rest of me is under shade. So I think I've learned that if I'm in brilliant sun and the camera's in the shade, that doesn't work. The lighting's terrible. If vice versa, the lighting's terrible. And so I'm just sharing this for whatever reason. So it is finally sunny here. It's been a breezy, nice day. The main rain has passed here in McCall, Idaho. I'll save some of this for the top of the hour. I'm in 4 minutes. But I'm just sharing some technology stuff, more of just a diary for me. I moved the dish from outside of my cabin to out in the middle of this flat soccer field, next to the basketball courts. Maybe at the end, I'll swing you around and show you the location. But even out there, I checked with my phone for obstructions, and it says maybe try a better place. So that pissed me off because there's like 2 pine trees in the very far perimetry of the obstruction circle, and it still said I needed to find a better place to set up, and I don't have time to do that. And I'm not sure there is a better place to set up. So I'll be curious to see if we have major problems again. Generally, I was feeling relatively okay about the signal yesterday, but I knew that there was partial obstructions. And so we'll just hope for the best. Is that all I want to say about technology? I guess so. I am totally cut off from power. So I'm using the power supply. The laptop is not plugged in. The iPads are using the wireless generated by Starlink. And so this is what I've been practicing. And so today's broadcast is the result of the practice. I hope I'll save that. Okay, so we have 2 minutes. Let me get my head right. 2 minutes before we begin our program. The geologists are parading off there as we speak, but I want to stay with you right here. And if I uphill, that might work. Okay, you're going to stare at the side of a cabin and the trunk of a pine tree for 2 minutes. Thank you for joining us. Hot mic. Okay. What are you going to report on for 25 minutes? You got one story, you've got another story, you've got a third story. And you might review the models. Are you heading back streaming right now? Thanks for coming.
Question.
Well, yeah, I think I'm just going to report on what's been going on the last 48 hours to the viewers, and then if we have a number of people popping in here, I'll just get them to stand right next to me, and I'll live quick chat. Folks will just introduce themselves, sense of what they're working on, and thank you. You're a nice guy. You're a nice guy. Johnny Wu, University of Houston. Very nice fellow. I check one more time. Are we okay? Thank you. A pleasant good afternoon to you. Hello and welcome to McCall, Idaho. We are broadcasting live right now from the Geological Society of America's Penrose Conference. We are wrapping up day 4. Is that right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yes, it is Tuesday, August 22nd at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And so what is the plan today before I lose track of that? There was a breakout session among the small groups of geologists just a bit ago. They are reconvening, I believe, in the next few minutes into the chapel to continue the reports and discussing Mexican geology. That has been the theme this morning. And I think the plan is, unless somebody really gets carried away in there, that in about 25 minutes from now, a few geologists are going to be coming down the hill behind you, and I'm going to be distracted by that. And I have made an announcement about an hour ago that if they want to come down and watch what I'm doing, see what kind of setup I have, possibly give them a few ideas about doing this themselves if they have any interest, that's great. But I said bonus points, geologists, if you want to literally step 5 more steps and stand right next to me right here, and we'll mic this guest up and have the guest introduce themselves to you, tell them what generally they've been learning and why they're at the conference, and some of the exciting collaborations possibly that they've been working on with people. And ideally, there will be some of our Mexican colleagues, some geologists from India, Canada, the lower 48, Alaska, UK, Australia. I don't know, get your world maps out. We'll see how far we can get. But beyond that, there is no plan, except that 5:30, which is about an hour from now, the dinner bell is going to ring. And so I think by the time I start getting, I may be running out of battery anyway, but we're going to try to as many people one at a time to get on camera, interact with you, answer a few of your questions. So maybe, okay, it's choppy, huh? I can see the broadcast right now. Let me pause. Big cutout. This is disappointing. I'm gonna try not to have it ruin my day, but this is disappointing. That frickin' dish has no obstructions, and why are we having problems? Okay, I'm gonna hold on for just a second because I don't think this is gonna make the replay. The major buffering and cutouts, we just lose in the replay. Please type in if you have returned to 5x5, however, whatever your tricks are in your end. Please type in 5x5, and that will if I see enough 5x5s, I know that we're past that buffer, and then I'll let you talk to each other about how to get back to normal. I can see the broadcast here, and it's getting better, but all right, thank you. But it is an episode ideally with a dozen different geologists, one at a time, standing right here, talking directly into the camera. And, you know, some will be more comfortable with that than others. Some will be excited because they are normally on your end. I know that. Some of them are regular viewers, but many others might be just completely confused and like looking at themselves down here or something. So we'll just have to roll with it. And some of the geologists I know quite well by now, some I've barely spoken to, and they might want to come down and be on camera. So we're just going to have to roll with it the best we can. But essentially between now and then, and again, if you're watching this in replay, I think the next 20 minutes or so is just going to be me. And if you want to fast forward through this part, watching it in replay, that's fine, I guess. But I will continue on the themes that I established last night. So I did a live stream from my cabin last night, which I presume was going to be worse signal than now, but I guess we'll let it play itself out. So can I continue, please, with the two narratives? The two narratives from the last live stream that I'd like to continue right now are, I'm just realizing the wind calmed down. Whatever, I got to get off the technology. Can I continue the chronology of what's been going on day by day, hour by hour, to give you a flavor of what's been happening here? And can I continue to build on the positive reports? There have been some more positive experiences, in a couple of cases, almost goosebumps kind of moments since I saw you last. In other words, earlier today. And I'm still high off of those couple of moments. Okay. So logistically, we're wrapping up day 4. Tomorrow is a field trip. The weather's supposed to be decent, and I think we are going to places that I visited with the Zentners last week. I'm not sure I'm going to go out with those guys tomorrow because I was just out there last week, and I wonder how much new I can capture, but that's iffy. But today, I think folks are starting to wear out. Again, this is from 8 in the morning, and heavy thinking, heavy contributions, heavy discussions, lots of commitment until 9 or 10 at night. And this is the 4th day in a row of that sort of thing. And yet the magical moments and the positive experiences continue. So taking a couple steps back, I shared the format last time, so I'm not going to go through that again, except to say quick. The conveners of the conference: Basil Tikoff, University of Wisconsin; Stacia Gordon, University of Nevada, Reno; Ellen Nelson, University of Wisconsin-Madison; Elena from Mexico City. They have on purpose created a multiple set of formats. And those formats are so different from each other that the continued discussion has a life of its own. All in the name of disarming people, all in the name of fluid exchange of ideas, big and small. And again today, even what I viewed the most staunch people who were going to be in, puffing up their chests, who was going to be in here actually defending in a very negative, defensive way their work, there's none of that. And I think if the conference had a different tone early on, we would not have that. It's to the point now on Tuesday, with 2 more days to go, that people are openly referring the spirit of the conference, as in, due to the spirit of the conference, I can say that my data is permissible for 2 different models. Like they're volunteering an open-ended discussion themselves. And what a pleasant surprise that has been. So specifically, those formats today were 8 o'clock, 30-minute talk by Tim Lawton. And Tim is an older gentleman, one of the oldest people here, in addition to Daryl Cowan. And Tim published with Bill Dickinson from Stanford and Arizona. If you remember back to the Merle Beck interviews that I did last summer and 3 summers ago, Paleo Mag pioneer Merle Beck, the #1 critic, according to Merle Beck directly, of the Baja BC ideas was Bill Dickinson. Bill Dickinson has passed away, but his co-author, Tim Lawton, was a key portion of this morning's discussion. talking about the Southern Cordillera this morning. We're down in Mexico looking at the geology down there. And Tim Lawton is a regular viewer of your community. Tim Lawton, the co-author with Bill Dickinson, has been watching many of these programs in these live chats. He just doesn't comment. And so that's been a thrill to have a direct connection to the Bill Dickinson world. You remember Bill Dickinson was the major proponent of flat lab subduction. Tim Lawton is open. Tim Lawton has published eastward subduction, but if you really look carefully at the record, Tim Lawton and Bill Dickinson had one of their last papers proposing westward subduction, at least at a time, off the coast of Mexico. That was new to me. I maybe should have known that, but that was new to me. After Tim Lawton, there was a 30-minute talk by Elisa. Sorry, I don't have the last name. I hope that she'll join us here. Gave an excellent talk. Elisa, a professor from Mexico City, I do believe, and some of her students were there as well. And she was talking about severe style and laramide style deformation. She's a structural geologist from mainland Mexico. But her point was, mentor, who has passed away recently and was a pioneer geologist, woman geologist, sorry I don't have the name, proposed a Mexican origin, a Mexican orogeny, not the name laramide, but some of the same styles, but also some different styles of deformation and some different rocks. To just say that the laramide Rocky Mountain building goes into Mexico is inappropriate, according to Elisa, and a few of the presentations this afternoon have already reflected that and have changed their slides, and even a couple of cases, their posters, to call it the Mexican orogeny, to emphasize that that mountain building, during Rocky Mountain building time, with some thin-skinned and thick-skinned deformation, the hit phase, essentially, is not an identical story to the Rocky Mountain development in the lower 48 states, and the Canadian Rockies for that matter as well. So those two kind of long kind of keynote addresses this morning were incredibly useful. And then coffee break. And then late this morning, we had the lightning round again. And I failed to mention this last time, but the internet is slow here. And for a time, multiple hours yesterday, the internet was down, probably due to the weather. I don't know though. And so Stacia Gordon, who is running the logistics of the meeting, stayed with me last week with the private home, and Stacia was with the Zentners, and I showed Stacia the Starlink setup last week just for our own personal use in that private home. And so in a panic yesterday, Stacia says, "Have you got the Starlink thing going here? We need it. We need your dish to get this conference up and running again." Because all the lightning talks, all the short 2 to 3 minute talks from each of the students, the junior colleagues who were then whetting the appetite for them to go over to the poster, could not have happened without the Starlink system. So our community directly impacted the success just in a mechanical way this yesterday and this morning as well. The dirty little secret is that nobody else has my password because I don't want everybody using our wireless, or we're going to have even more problems that we've had, although the signal looks decent right now. Probably just jinxed it. Okay, so can I describe for you, I've got maybe 10 minutes to stall before we might start seeing a few people coming down the hill. If you just joined us, I'm hoping to have a number of geologists live, one at a time, miking them up, talking into the camera, and I think I have an ask for you, especially if you're a veteran of the live chat for years or even months. First of all, I'll just say right off the bat, you know that we do uppercase, caps lock, to actually ask your question. That's very helpful here. We're not ready for that yet. But I think because if I have 15 people that want to be on camera one at a time, we're going to have to be efficient about this. I'll mic them up. I don't know, maybe I'll just do this. I don't know. And I think I'm going to ask them to give their name, their university or research affiliation, why they came to the conference, a couple of major things they've learned thus far, and then we'll just go right to the live chat. So my ask is, can you be extra quick with your questions? Maybe can you even anticipate your questions if I have a Mexican geologist on or Alaskan geologist? And maybe I'll continue to stall just briefly with you here. Stall is the wrong word, but maybe I'll fill time with, same thing. And review with you as I wait for geologists to arrive, the 4 tectonic models that we covered ad nauseum over the course of last winter. And those 4 models continue to be a huge part of our framing discussions this week at the Penrose Conference. So that's what we'll do. Hang on a second. How are you today? 520 watching? Good. Okay. In 10 minutes, here is a quick review. No. Before I give you the 4 models, let me try to describe a couple of the magical moments this morning. And I told them as soon as those magic moments happened, I was not going to use their names, but I said I am going to report on this. This is a big moment. Magic moment number 1, it happened during the poster sessions, and the poster sessions are happening on 2 floors of the dormitories in the rooms, in the rec rooms, basically. There's a pool table, there's ping pong, there's a fireplace, and it's, people are just sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor. These well-respected geologists that many of you know, it's like a slumber party half the time. So in the middle of all this hubbub about posters and visiting these things, there were well-respected and well-known geologists, 1 tomographer, mantle tomographer, 1 major proponent of one of the major tectonic models, and a couple other field mappers. And they were comparing ideas, and they were all looking at this map of the Western Cordillera, mostly in the lower 48 states. And they started wondering out loud about the terrain, which is in southern British Columbia and crosses into northern Washington, and the Vizcaíno area of Baja California. And as they continued to talk more and more, is the Bridge River, the Vizcaíno arc, the same. And to this point, there has not been a geologic easy tie. Baja, BC says that we're taking pieces of Mexico and sending them all the way up to British Columbia. And it's tough to find these beautiful piercing points with exactly the right stuff. I see I'm breaking up a little bit. I don't give a shit. We're just going to keep going. Those 2 terrains, there was a bunch on the Bridge River, other people in this just casual discussion sitting on the carpet, the coffee-stained carpet, next to the recycle bin. We're talking about what they knew about Vizcaíno. And then one of the young people, just starting their PhD, but already experienced with the Bridge River terrain, happened to say, or they said, "Hey, you're here." I'm not going to use the name. "You're here. Come on over. Hey, we got some questions for you about the Bridge River." And they said, what can you tell us about the Bridge River? And this kid started talking about the details of the bedrock and all the reading he's done, including the people sitting in the circle. And then he said, "I've also gone down to the Vizcaíno and I've been working down there." This kid's on it. This kid is on potential ties between those 2 units. And if that pans out and that becomes his PhD, that would be a tremendously exciting thing. And it's not like this conference gave him the idea because he was ahead of everybody else. But this discussion was just perfectly set up. It almost like it was a movie script. And then in walks this kid saying, "Yeah, I've already been looking at that." So using new techniques that were not available 20, 30, 40 years ago. That was a magic moment. Another magical moment, I maybe commented briefly on this yesterday, but I'm particularly fond of moments where I am casually chatting with one person who has very strong views. Remember now, this is the particular spirit of this conference. It's a good spirit. And whether they are familiar with me very much or not, I'm asking my dopey questions. Some of them are truly dopey. Sometimes I pretend I'm dopey just to get to a point where I want to get, but I'm always coming at it from a man off the street kind of a view. But it's 3 times now where I'm standing talking to this person, or maybe sitting at the breakfast table with this person, and we're kind of getting into their answering my questions, and then their rival. And again, we don't have that energy, but somebody who clearly history of publishing very different views on a topic. It happened 3 times now. I'm not saying I'm a key part of this, but that other person just happens to sit down. And I realize it just out of the court, pretend I don't see them for a little bit, and then realize that they're sitting there, and I'm still talking to this other person. Somehow, just as casually as possible, and they're probably aware of what I'm doing, but maybe not, I somehow just kind of back out of the conversation, and before I know it, these 2 folks are talking. And I act as some sort of referee, but that's the wrong term. I'm some sort of lighthouse, some sort of security object that they're looking at me just as much as each other, but I'm not speaking. And it is a tremendous privilege, and it is a thrill to be part of those discussions. Will they go anywhere? Probably not. Will there be a tremendous collaboration between some of them? Probably not. But just these conversations, which maybe should have been happening for the last 20 years, just don't happen. And that is the beauty of the Penrose Conference. So I had another conversation with the GSA president last night, and I was feeling a little bold. And I said, hey, and I don't think he's watched that much. He knows what we're doing, but he doesn't watch that going on here. And I volunteered this. And I said, blank, I was starting to feel pretty good about myself over the winter with this Baja BC series I was doing. And I maybe even said out loud, at least in an audio podcast, maybe what I'm doing is a Penrose Conference, maybe what I'm doing for free with an iPhone and a couple of microphones and a laptop, maybe I'm doing an El Cheapo version, but I'm doing the same kind of thing that a Penrose Conference would do. I'm sharing ideas. I'm giving people room to talk for an hour or more and answer questions. And now that geologists are watching some of these programs, maybe I'm essentially doing what a Penrose Conference does. But I told this GSA president last night over meatloaf or whatever the hell it was, no, I'm not. Because this is and he agreed. This Penrose is working perfectly. And many of these little snapshots and magical moments that I'm reporting clearly would not happen unless the tone was set and we were into day 4 and there's trust and there's these different formats of discussion that are happening. And it is worth the expense to fly everybody in. I firmly believe that. And I don't think all Penrose conferences have been this successful, and I'm sure of that. But this one is off the charts. Absolutely. Brandon likes meatloaf. Good news, everybody. Okay, well, they should be showing. So Johnny Wu, I will mention his name. So if you remember Spencer Houston from Houston, his former advisor was Johnny Wu. At the time, University of Houston, and Johnny Wu, a mantle tomographer who does similar but also different techniques than Karin Siglock, involving images from the mantle. Johnny watches some of these programs, and Johnny just happened to, did you hear me during the hot mic session? That was Johnny coming all the way down here, just a very nice fellow, and said, I'll just remind people one more time as we leave to head down and join us, because he's worried that everybody's going to stiff me. And maybe they will. I mean, they have one free half an hour. Maybe they wouldn't want to come down here and have to think any more than they have already. But we might have Johnny Wu. We might have some Mexican students. Now I truly am stalling because I thought people would be down here by now. Why not? Let's just do a little live Q&A just for me based on what I just said for the last 15 minutes, if you like. And I'll check the batteries here on everything. 80% on the iPad, 82% in the, okay, we're all about 80% on these things. 80% in the power supply. We're doing well there. Just in case I start seeing somebody, let me get my other mic ready. I guess we'll hook them up here, but I don't know if that's, if it's going to be that fluid, maybe I'll just share my mic, but we'll play that one by ear. Uppercase, do you have any questions for me? Happy to repeat something from yesterday if you didn't see yesterday's live report. This might be the last live report I do from the Penrose. How many attendees might be switching their position via Baja BC? Brian, thank you for the question. Difficult to say. To expect someone who's invested even in research and collecting data supporting one model and then have them by the end of the week saying, well, that's it, I'm totally to a different model. I think that's unreasonable. But the feeling I have is that, number one, are we sure the 4 models are the 4 choices? Okay, I'll give you another story quick. Thank you for the prompt there, Brian. There's a young cat, again, no names, super impressed with him. And he's done about 10 years of field work in Alaska. And he is an independent thinker. And he had a brand new idea about the CarMax, which you might remember, I brought up yesterday as well. To me, the CarMax group, the lavas of the CarMax in Yukon, which are 70 million years old and need lots of displacement from the south. This kid is starting to share his new idea, and some of the veterans are wondering, maybe there's something to that. I won't share it, but there's movement there. Now, does that mean we have to wholesale go to one model and jump ship to the next? I'm not sure, but it's maybe to that level where some of these problems that have existed forever and ever, Bridge River, what's that to the south, talked about that story. Now, CarMax, how do you deal with it? Nobody has an explanation for the CarMax except for the ribbon continent model, right? This kid's got a new idea that he might work on. I'll give you another one without names, also involving the CarMax and the Tintina fault. The major problem with the Tintina fault, which lines up perfectly with the Rocky Mountain Trench, is you can see that fault from space. You can see the Rocky Mountain Trench from space. And I think late in the winter series, we said, wouldn't it be ironic if a major Baja BC fault was the one you could see from space? And we've missed it this whole time. Well, one of the geologists who's been at this a long time pulled me aside at the coffee break, and I've become also now some sort of priest. I'm this trusted person to share some new thoughts. But at the end, they always say, don't tell anybody. So I'm not going to tell you who it is. And I'm not going to tell you the idea either. But this person proudly opened their notebook, kind of a ledger-sized notebook, with carefully drawn sketches of a tectonic model that ties into his model that he said he had staring at the ceiling in his bunk bed last night trying to fall asleep. And when he showed me that series of sketches, his little flashlight, I guess, this morning at 10:30, like, nope. And then he said, brilliant, don't you think? And I said, yes, I do. So it's those moments, I apologize for the language, but that's a direct quote. And this person's not particularly cocky, but that was a light bulb moment for him that he had simply by stewing in some of these talks and discussions. And that's also a direct result of the Penrose. Back to your questions. How is the overall narrative of Baja, BC going or doing? I talked to Darrell Cowan about this, longtime PaleoMag supporter. The conference in 1999, which was hosted at the Red Barn in Winthrop, Washington, according to many who were here, there's just a few that were at that conference, and now here they are, whatever it is, 25 years later. Sarnav, come on down. Let me finish my thought, and then we have guests starting to arrive. Oh, you're good. You don't have to run. You're good. You're good. Let me just finish my thought, and then we'll hook you up. The PaleoMag was the huge divider 25 years ago at the prior Penrose. Were you supporting PaleoMag or just saying it's crazy data and we're going to ignore it? And there was no getting past that huge division. Here, everyone is embracing PaleoMag to a certain degree. There is no discussion of the PaleoMag data is totally worthless. And so in that sense, then everybody's talking about northward translation as a very real thing because they're acknowledging the PaleoMag data. So in that sense, Baja, BC, they're here. They were invited or they applied to be here because they wanted to be part of that discussion, but not necessarily totally there on all fronts. Okay, our first guest has arrived. You're the guinea pig. Let's try it. This is Sarnav from India, and I'm going to have you stand right here, young man.
Okay.
And if you want to, this is the camera up here.
Hi, everybody.
Could you please tell us where you're from and what will you be studying here in Washington?
First of all, thank you, Nick,
Yes,
for inviting me.
absolutely.
I'm really pleased to be here.
Good.
Yeah, so I am from India. I have worked in ONGC for the last 4 years. Prior to that, I was a master's student at IIT Bombay. But even though I was from IIT Bombay, I think my basic understanding about geology came from my bachelor's, and it's still with me right now. So I have lost a lot of my master's knowledge, but I think a lot of what I learned in bachelor's is still with me now. And that has basically helped me give the confidence to leave my job and come to a place where I can really study geology and I can have rocks in my hand. So again, so this gives me another opportunity to thank Dr. Stacia Gordon, who took me in her lab, and we will be working in North Cascades, and we will be looking at a particular piece of rock unit called the Skagit gneiss. It's not a well-studied gneiss. There are still confusions about how much of it is orthogneiss, how much of it is the metasedimentary gneiss, but we will be looking at a lot of it. We will be looking at the mapping in the northwest of Chelan Lake, and we will do some geochronology, some thermobarometry, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Excellent. So let's just chat back and forth. You're just standing right there, if you don't mind. So you were in your homeland of India like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, really? Yeah.
And
not even 2. This is the 11th day. Yeah, so technically not 2 weeks. Yeah.
And so you accepted to come and work with Stacia. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to be a new member of the dream team, essentially.
Yeah, essentially,
yes.
It was my dream, and so.
And there was, you weren't planning on coming to the Penrose Conference. Can you say how that came about?
Yeah, so basically I just came into America. I was just settling in, and I I just had my bank account done, basically. Yeah, I still don't have my debit card with me. And then suddenly there were some cancellations maybe in the
Yeah.
Penrose, and Stacia just offered me that whether I would like to be here. And just top of my head, why shouldn't I be here?
Yes.
Right? Even though I just asked her that I am such a novice that I have nothing to contribute to this thing.
Right.
And Stacia just said, just come along. And I said,
Good.
yep, I should do that. Yeah. And it's been worth it. Yeah.
Good, good. And your hometown again in India is?
It's Kolkata.
Skuldat.
Kolkata.
Oh, Calcutta.
Yeah,
Thank
Kolkata.
you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So Skagit Nice, Stacia Gordon, many of you know about Stacia and that work. And I don't see anybody else coming, so we got a few extra minutes here,
Yep.
Sarnav. Thank you. Any questions for Sarnav about, well, just, you didn't choose to come to the Penrose. It was just kind of like given to you,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yep.
While we wait for a couple of questions from these guys, I have one. How much have you been able to follow?
Oh, yeah.
Since you're just thrown, I've been watching some of these programs in the
Yep.
past. Has it helped you?
Definitely. Actually, just prior to the conference, Tisha sent me some videos about the lectures that happened in Reno, I guess, a few months back.
Yes.
And that has, I watched those. And I came here and I saw that, yep, they were talking pretty similar things about that. And not only that, I was also reading a lot of papers that you were discussing in your previous lectures,
Yes.
mostly the hit and run by Basil Tikoff.
Good.
Yep, and that is mostly the basis around which we are just
Okay.
navigating this
Yeah.
Penrose. Yeah, and that has really helped me. Yeah.
Good. So you were watching in India our
No.
live program.
Yep, some in while I was in New York in the layover.
Oh,
Yeah,
in the airport.
Yeah, big
Okay.
10-hour layover.
Okay.
I needed something to do there.
Oh, good. How about 3 questions for Sarnav? And then I see Nick is here. Are you willing to be on camera, Nick? Okay, great. So thank you for the questions, everybody. What drew you to geology? Why did you become a geologist to begin with?
Oh, yeah, that's a very common question we get as geologists.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I should say I was born in a mining town.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was working in Tata Steel, and I was born and raised in different mines, I guess.
Yeah.
And until I went to hostel, yeah, and then I came out from school, and I had one thing in mind, that I needed to do geology, right? I did not know how much I would love this subject back then.
Yes.
But somehow, after bachelor's, it was the only thing that I loved.
Right.
Yep. A lot of my friends tell me even now that I might marry a rock. Yeah, so that's it.
You can't rule that out.
Yeah, never can rule that out.
Well, we've got a few others here, so
Yes,
I'm going to
sir.
pass it on. Thank you for helping us today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to meet
Great.
you.
I'm going to grab this. You did a beautiful job. Wonderful. Let's
Thank
bring
you.
it back out. Thank you, Sarnav. Nick, come on in here.
Hello.
Hey. Oh, some might recognize you
Maybe.
from YouTube.
You guys watch Tectonic acrossthemojave.com.
Yeah, why not? Plug what you're doing here.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen it before, I have my own YouTube series, A Different Nick Geologist. So I did this thing where I hiked about 500 miles across the Mojave Desert while filming a educational YouTube series where I talk about geology while hiking around the desert. So if you haven't heard of that, check it out. On YouTube, I'm Tectonic. Just
Excellent.
like tectonic with a K.
So you're a professor, and if they haven't seen your channel, what kind of research have you been doing?
So I mostly work in the Mojave Desert, looking at plutonic rocks, and my students work on all sorts of other random things. But
Okay.
uh,
And why did you come to the Penrose, Nick?
well, so the Mojave Desert has this problem where it's got plutonism that continues past 85 MA. So the rest of the Sierra Nevada, Baja, and all the arc ends right at 75 MA. Sorry, right at 85 MA, and
Okay.
the Mojave keeps going to like 70, which is a big problem because that's also exactly where the flat slab is supposed to go through.
Oh, yeah.
So you should think the magnetism should stop earlier there, but it actually keeps on going longer in the Mojave. So one solution to get around this would be, well, maybe there's no flat slab at all. Maybe we just have this insular superterrain come in and smash in, and everything after 100 million years would then be some sort of slab breakoff or slab failure magnetism.
Excellent.
Which obviates the problem of the flat slab.
Yeah.
And then we just have to figure out how to get in this mysterious schist
Good.
in there.
Viewers, how about let's get one question for Nick. What's your school? Where are you teaching?
So I teach at Cal Poly Pomona in Southern California.
Okay. And will you continue along those lines that you just described? Is that your main wheelhouse as far as research for the next few years at least?
So that's my main wheelhouse. Yeah, I do have students who do all sorts of random projects from like rock glaciers to, random structural geology things.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah. Everybody's, hi, Cal Poly Pomona is near where I'm studying at UC Riverside. Not exactly a question, but thank you anyway. I don't see an easy question here. I think we're just going to move on.
Okay.
But thanks, Nick.
See you guys.
Appreciate it. Can I grab this from you first?
Oh, yeah. Let me not steal your microphone.
No, fine. Thank you. I appreciate you helping me out. Elisa, hello. Thank you. Good. Can I pin this right here? Sure. It's like a prom here. And you were, absolutely. So you were the star of the show today. Could you tell these guys your name, your university, and what you maybe spoke about this morning, please?
Well, my name is Elisa Fitz. Should I look that way?
Yeah, right into the camera here, you bet.
So my name is Elisa Fitz, and I work at the National University Autonomous of Mexico, which is like the central campus is based in central Mexico. And I'm a professor there, and I teach structural geology. Mm-hmm. And I came to this meeting because it's very important, because it helps us understand how the western side of the Cordillera was built up. And so the Cordillera goes all the way from Canada, well, from Alaska, Canada, the central part of the United States, and Mexico as well. Mm-hmm. And so I came here to contribute with my knowledge on the Mexican geology, in particular the formation of the Sierra Madre Oriental, that's my specialty. Mm-hmm. And more recently, like the Sierra Madre de Chiapas. If you have never been to Mexico, I recommend you to go to Chiapas. It's beautiful.
Excellent. Well, that talk was just so wonderful this morning. And one of the things that I think that I learned was that your laramide style deformation is not really laramide, different rocks, many differences. That was kind of your main point, and we want to call it the Mexico origin?
Yeah, we kind of just to bring up like more attention to the fact that, like historically, a lot of the geology started to be done in the United States. Mm-hmm. And for many decades, we just imported the ideas into Mexico because we did not have enough data to actually, construct understanding of things.
Yes.
So we just projected them and we, not really think deeply about them. Uh-huh. Then I did a PhD in the United States at the University of Minnesota, and then a postdoc in Michigan. Mm-hmm. But my research was based in Mexico, so I got to learn the way of thinking of this geology from this side. And then I came back to Mexico, and then I realized that actually things did not happen exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. In many senses. So like the formation that we observed down there in Mexico has a different style. The sedimentation associated with it doesn't look exactly like in the Laramide Mountains, which I had the opportunity to visit when I was studying in the United States. Yeah. And the magmatism actually wasn't the same thing.
Okay.
And so then I was lucky enough to meet this guy. You're going to see it in a minute. This guy is Tim Lawton.
Yeah.
He's like a really bright sedimentologist who is specialized in the sedimentation that happens during the formation of these buildings, in the U.S. And I was lucky enough that he went to Mexico for 5 years to do research. And when we met there, we realized that actually, like, I talked to him and I was like, oh, the Laramide is not here in Mexico. And he told me the same thing, right? So we decided to write this provocative paper to bring up attention to the fact that it's not the same and that the geodynamics associated, even though they are part of the same feature, the geodynamic scenarios that generate this belt, these faultrous belts in the foreland side are not the same.
Excellent. We got one question from Brandon, and then we'll turn you loose. Brandon says, how does the Baja BC hypothesis go over in Mexico? Is it more or less expected or controversial, possibly?
Actually, all this meeting is about that. The whole thing, the whole discussion.
Right.
So far we don't have evidence of like a clear correlation between BC and Baja so far. So we need to we need to review, exactly what are the criteria to put them together, or just to dissociate them. But yeah, that's to be answered.
And your work is mostly on the hit, and forget about the run. You're talking about,
I work about
if there was a hit.
If there was a hit, but which not the deformation in Mexico, not necessarily you can associate to a hit.
Yes.
But just to like an extended subduction.
Right. With those different episodes.
With those different episodes that we observe. And actually, my geology does not support the hit, at least not in that latitude.
Hey.
If it happened, it had to happen further north.
And I think Basil doesn't have that insular as far as you were talking today. I think his latitude is a little bit north of you. So,
I think we need to, we were talking about revisiting the DC ages.
Right.
In the BZ terrains to see if they have this Gondwanan signature that can link them to the latitude of Mexico.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you
for
participating. I really appreciate it. Let me get in here.
Okay. Well,
you deserved an extra beer tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Andrea, come on in, please.
Hello.
How are you? Can I pin
Good.
you here real
Yeah.
quick? And I'll just put this on your pocket. Could you say your name, please, your school, and what you are studying right now?
Hi, I'm Andrea Richardson. I'm a PhD student at Washington State University. So I'm in the same state as Nick now.
You sure are.
Hello, my parents who are watching.
Oh, do you know that for a fact? Did you
Yes.
text them? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Mom and Dad. So why are you at this conference? What have you gotten out of it so far?
I'm at this conference because it is luckily exactly on the field area that I am working in. Goes through Riggins and looks at the Salmon River Suture Zone, where we have accreted terrains that got pretty deformed and metamorphosed, and then later overprinting by the Western Idaho Shear Zone.
Are you just starting this PhD, or have you been at it a while?
I'm a year in, and so I've got I've done the data collection for the first part of it.
Okay. Yeah. So the goal, is there one question you're working on?
To look at the timing and drivers of exhumation.
Drivers of exhumation.
And so I have found great evidence of shearing and like just strain, showing that there was distributed deformation throughout these. And my later work on timing and the different sheets of the system are going to give a great idea of mechanism and whether it was the sequence.
Terrific.
Exhuming with different parts.
Terrific. Well, I think we're going to move on. I don't see an obvious question, but I appreciate you joining us. And one more hello to your parents. Where are they viewing from?
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay. Go Vols and go Cougs. Thank you, Andrea. All right. Oh, Tim, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome, Nick.
This is nice.
It's good to see you.
Okay, you've had a busy day.
Oh boy, it was great. I'm ready to go to the bar, man.
Would you mind telling these guys your name?
Where should I look?
Yeah, right up here in the camera. Okay. And where do you teach? Are you teaching? And why are you here at the conference?
Nick, I actually have a fairly checkered career. I started teaching at New Mexico State University after a brief stint with Ohio Petroleum, which actually became BP.
Okay.
And that's southern New Mexico. It's a wonderful little town called Las Cruces. It's just up the river from El Paso. And after I taught there for 26 years, I retired and I went to teach in central Mexico at the Autonomous University of Mexico in Querétaro. And this was a wonderful gig. I worked there for 5 years. I taught. I learned enough Spanish to teach in Spanish. And eventually I came home and officially retired for a year because my wife didn't really want to live in Mexico. And I currently began in 2019. I work at the Bureau of Economic Geology in Austin, Texas, which is affiliated with the Department what is now planetary, Earth and planetary sciences in Austin.
So would you mind sharing a little bit about what you told me a few days ago about publishing with Bill Dickinson and how that paper is maybe not what people think about when they think of Bill, as far as the westward subduction portion of the idea that you had?
Okay, right. Okay, so Bill Dickinson was my advisor at the University of Arizona. And we kind of cycled back to work with one another during the late 90s because we were interested in the origins of a sedimentary basin in southern Arizona and southwestern New Mexico that extends down into Mexico. And I was working with a colleague named Nancy McMillan at New Mexico State University, who is a really good igneous petrologist. And we noticed the difference or similarities between the Rio Grande Rift, which is a very young rift in New Mexico, and the Bisbee Basin. And we came to the conclusion that the Bisbee Basin was probably formed by the rollback of the subducted slab, which forced the upper plate to track it and then extend. And so Bill and I got to talking about this, and I actually asked him at one point, I said, what do you think about trying to do an analysis of the geology of Mexico, say for the Mesozoic or something like that? And he said, you know what? You caught me at a really good time. So what we did is we sat down, and this was the late days. So you could actually hope to read geology of Mexico in a reasonable period of time.
Yeah.
And so we did that. We sat down, we tried to read everything. Some of it's in French, a lot of it's in Spanish. And we wrote a synthesis of the geology of Mexico from about 300 million years to, say, 65 million years ago. And we came up with some models, some of which have been both accepted with great alacrity or welcome. They were very welcome, but other groups of people just didn't care much at all for them.
Yeah.
And
Well, that paper is a big part of today's discussion, and I think Karin wants to visit with you if she hasn't already. I know she's Karin Siglock said, I'm sorry, I can't join your live stream. I need to talk with Tim. We got some ideas to go back and forth. I'm going to get to a couple of the other guys here, but I thank you so much for joining us here, Tim.
Great
Thank you.
opportunity. Thank you.
You betcha. All right. Thanks. I'm trying to get to your questions, but I'm also trying to do 5 things at once. So keep those questions coming if you can. No, I'm good, Mike. I'm good.
All right.
Mike, let's mic'd up. No pun intended. I'm right in here. You tell these guys your name, please, where you're working, and why you're at the conference, Mike.
Yeah, I'm Mike Darin. I'm currently with the Oregon State Geologic Survey. We go by the acronym DOGAMI. And I've been there for the last few months. Before that, I was tenure track faculty at University of Nevada, Reno. And so I do lots of geologic mapping. I'm really a field geologist by trade, so I like to get the details from the rocks themselves. I like that natural laboratory. And I come back and I use structural geology and stratigraphy to try to understand basins and mountain ranges and how they evolve and how the stratigraphic record can tell us about past mountain belts and, deformation in the continents.
That radio voice is really coming through, Mike, I got to say.
Hey, I'll take the mic placement. Give that one to you.
So are you fishing for new projects, or are there collaborations that you've already got started, or something else about the Penrose here?
Yeah, so I'm most excited about getting into this time period and this problem in the Pacific Northwest. And so most of my background has been in my interest has been in the younger part of the Pacific North America plate boundary, down in the Gulf of California and Baja, and in Southern California, and understanding recent tectonics, related to the San Andreas Fault and major changes from subduction to strike slip. And I'm interested in those changes in the geologic record, and there's been a lot of changes when we go back in time to this whole long segment of the whole Cordillera, major changes from convergence to strike slip faulting. And so it's a similar problem, but on a longer time scale, and that affected much more of the margin. So I'm trying to represent Oregon's interest in this Congress and understand that section of the margin between sort of Washington and Oregon and how it fits in with a BC picture.
Well, you're doing a fine job, and you keep coming back to Columbia embayment. It seems like I'd love to
Yeah.
see somebody working on that embayment.
You know, it is a really important problem. It's unfortunate that the Great Columbia River basalts, which are important in a lot of ways for understanding volcanotectonic events in the Northwest, but it's really concealing a lot of the record in this corner of the origin. And I think, you know, if we could only see straight through it, it'd be great. But we'll have to use what bits of the geologic record we have in the little places in Oregon where we have rocks of this age, of late Cretaceous to Eocene, and tracking down as many clues as we can from those and putting it into the puzzle of the Columbia embayment. And so I'm really interested in the Siletzia accretion, the collision of this oceanic plateau in the early Eocene, and yeah, what the margin looked like before that and after. And so one of the tools I use in my research, once I'm done in the field, is stepping back and going to the really big picture of the plate scale and working with tectonic reconstructions to put things back in their place. Because when we think about deep time, the current maps are great to say where things are now, but we really need to think about them in a reference frame that restores them. And, you know, it's a big project to restore the whole margin, but I'm trying to start with the Oregon part of it and get us back to at least 50 million years ago so that we can go even further back to think about this Baja BC. And we have to know the canvas we had at 50 million years if we want to step back even deeper. So I'm trying to get us one step backwards in that reconstruction.
I could listen to you all day, but we're gonna cut it off there. You should start a podcast, Mike.
Hey, if you got time for another, we could team up.
Okay. Thank you for helping me.
Yeah, great. Keep the questions coming in.
Very good. I'm snagged up. Here we go.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Nikki, come on in here. We're still rolling. They're about to ring the dinner bell, but we're going to squeeze a few more of you guys in. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, nice to be here with y'all.
Let's get it here. Good. Can you look right in there, please, and tell these guys who you are and where do you work?
Yes, my name is Nikki Seymour. I am brand new faculty at Occidental College. I think in the past you've talked to one of my colleagues, Margie Russmore.
Yeah.
And so I am also a tectonicist. I'm really interested in this idea of big picture tectonics and really how do rocks respond to stress. So we get stressed out, we can respond in any manner of ways. And what do the rocks do? They may be translated, you know, sometimes they may be partially subducted and then brought back up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in some of these questions.
Good. I'm going to talk to Nikki for a little bit, but can you please type in a question for Nikki, especially when you hear, are you working with students right now related to this conference at all?
Yeah, so that's what I'm really excited about, actually, is as a new faculty member, coming here to hear the ideas of some of my peers, people that I have learned from over the course of my career, my other new faculty that are showing up. And I actually, about 5 minutes ago, had a pretty great idea I'm excited about. And the great thing is a lot of the data already exist. And so when I get back to Oxy this fall, I'm going to be able to put some students on that immediately.
Did that question come out of the blue, or was it directly from the breakout discussion? Or I'm curious if you can report on what spurs an idea here, in what capacity.
I think it's partially as you know, day one is kind of overwhelming. But then pieces start to sink in,
right.
Things that you maybe didn't think about before, and then your other colleague frames it just in a little bit of a different way.
Yes.
And that will just flag something kind of new, but hadn't thought about in the context of the problem as it's brought up.
Totally. That's perfectly done. Yes. John wonders, where do you come in on the Baja to BC scale? Like, do you really like lots of translation? Are you agnostic? Are you not wanting much with the research you've done?
Right. I'm kind of a moderate translation person. So I work in Southern California. So you may have talked about the Pelona Orocopia Rand schist.
Absolutely.
And so I am a proponent of the insular hit occurring north of Southern California. Now, that said, we could have a discussion about the Pelona Orocopia Rand schist is younger. It doesn't necessarily rule it out as long as it's out of the way in time.
Excellent. One more. David says, have you ever seen rocks like in the Western Idaho Shear Zone before?
I have, actually. So I did my PhD in northern Chile along the Atacama Fault System, which is also a transpressional intra-arc shear zone. So those rocks were not unfamiliar to me, and they're beautiful.
They are beautiful. Yes. Thank you for your help. It always feels so quick, but like I want to get a few more on here. So
all right.
Appreciate
Bye,
you coming. All right. Thanks, Nikki. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
Thank you for coming down. Can I pin this right here?
I think I might be one of the last few
There
here.
might be a few holdouts here. Oh goodness! I want to make sure I don't hurt your blouse here.
It's
So
totally fine.
So you spoke today. Go first of all, your name, please, and what school?
Hi, I'm Megan Flansburg. I'm at Oberlin College right now. I'm a visiting assistant professor. I'm a pretty newly minted PhD. I earned my PhD last summer. I'm from the University of Texas at Austin, and so I'm here presenting some of the later end of my PhD work in southeastern California and west central Arizona. At this sort of critical junction between the Mexican origin and what we call the severe origin on the United States side of things.
Was that your poster today?
That was my poster today, but it's sort of not the goal of my poster, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm in this really interesting area along the Colorado River between California and Arizona, those two states. And we see these extensional shear zones. These rocks have been really stretched out in this hot, what we call the ductile regime as structural geologists. And I like to date those shear zones to figure out when exactly that stretching happened. And so I'm also half a geochronologist. So I use radiogenic isotopes to figure out when things happened in that deformation history.
Has there been a moment or two this week so far that you've really had your mind changed about something, or at least introduced to a new concept that you didn't have before?
Yeah, actually, all of this, the hit and run model, I'm not sure I buy all of it. I'm sort of, you just heard from Nikki Seymour, and she's like, the hit's fine as long as it's north of Southern California.
Sounds familiar.
I'm still sort of in that camp, but one part of that model that sort of helps explain my stuff is that we have the entire Grand Canyon sedimentary package in my field area. So this is southwest of the Grand Canyon, but so that's almost a mile worth of sediment.
Right.
But where I'm working, it has been stretched out to be only 100 meters thick in some place, and that kind of deformation is a little hard to explain with the maybe more familiar flat slab subduction type model. And so there I'm actually kind of, it's making me think, I think.
Good.
That's good.
Good. Wonderful. Well, we got one or two more here. I'm going to keep it moving, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank y'all.
And good luck on.
Might possibly be where I
Okay,
am.
that works. Thank you. Bernie.
Howdy, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Mr. Hit and Run himself. I'm going to put this right in here. So this is a familiar face from two of the letters of the series. Let's have you step in a little closer to me.
2 letters.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, back-to-back episodes this January. So can you remind our viewers who you are and where you work? And you can look right in that camera there.
Yeah, so I'm Bernie Housen. I'm at Western Washington University. And so when I'm not doing administrative things as department chair, I'm a paleomagnetist.
And Merle, we lost Merle 6 months ago or more. He wanted to be here. We were talking over the breakfast table about maybe, are you encouraged by this conference in the view of what Merle went through and what you've gone through for much of your career?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's good. There are more people who are familiar with the data and kind of are appreciating, we have made some advances in how we analyze these paleomagnetic data and double check everything and make sure that we know the paleo horizontal and all that stuff. So yeah, and there's more acceptance of some of these models and some of the things that just don't ever make sense, like flat slabs. There are some good alternatives to that. So, but then there's still some people who just, well, no, we can't. That can't be right. So, because, it wouldn't work with this other thing. Yeah. Yeah. So there's still some of that.
So you were at the 99 Penrose Conference in Winthrop.
Yeah.
Can you give us one anecdote or something from that conference that gives us a flavor of why this vibe and spirit is so different than that? Or was it different?
Well, I think the timing of the Winthrop conference was probably when there was, a lot more divergence of opinion between, people who were more geology-y and people who did the paleomag, and
Yeah.
there was a lot more doubt. And so some of the conveners, and Ralph Hagerud, Paul Umhofer probably would be the top two. They were really wanting to have some kind of, oh, this is going to be great. We can have some good discussions and make a reconciliation and, path to peace and unity of our tectonic model. And that just didn't work. So, so I think the goals of that were, pretty ambitious in terms of our, sort of scientific consensus building. But, the data weren't there to make that happen.
Right. I see Stephen's over there. Stephen's going to be the last guest, but I got one more for you, Bernie. This is from David. Have there been any light bulb moments involving the CARMAX group at this conference thus far?
The only light bulb moment is it's still something that we have to figure out. So I think that's kind of the light bulb, is that, we know that it's still something that's hard to reconcile with some of these different data sets. For me, what I've learned the most is from some of these tomographic models and talking with the mantle dynamics people. So that's kind of fun and cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more. I can't hold it. Brandon says, "Why is paleomag so controversial, or is it that controversial? And has there been any major updates?"
Well, there's always updates in our science, and we're doing better. I think, the things that we've been, publishing lately are pretty good updates. It's a little weird why it's controversial. I think part of it is because geology is a very visual science, and all I need to do is get a little core of rock and stick it in a tube, and out comes some numbers, and then poof, I can tell you where something is. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what something next to it looks like. We got a number for it.
Yes.
And that's a little bit, let's just say magical to some people.
Right.
So I think, I think that it really can be we can't see this, so it's harder to be real about it.
Appreciate your time, Bernie.
Yeah,
well
thanks.
done as always. I really appreciate you joining us here. And
You sure you need one more guest?
I do. Absolutely, I do. Yes.
We got to hear about this.
Thanks,
CARMAX
Bernie.
stuff.
That's right. All right, we got one more.
Actually been on the CARMAX.
Yes, he has. So, Stephen Johnston, thank you for sticking around.
Yeah, no problem.
Why can't I get this on here? Hang on.
Don't we just
We're good. We're good. Shit. We're good. The CARMAX. You've drilled into the CARMAX.
I've drilled into the CARMAX, mostly with the CARMAX group. I've been the carrier of water. So you need water to facilitate the drilling. Mostly Randy Ankin and Jane Wynn were the ones with the authority to handle a drill.
Yes.
Yeah. So
where do you work? Remind folks who don't know you, your name and affiliation, and what kind of work you've been doing over the years.
So my name's Stephen Johnston. I'm a professor of geology at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Alberta. And I've been working in the Cordillera for a long time. I did my PhD thesis at the University of Alberta starting back in 1985.
Mm-hmm. You came here to this conference, and were you hoping for a very specific result, or was it more just general to be involved in the discussion, essentially?
Oh, I think it's both. I think it's also was an opportunity to see geology in this part of the world,
Yeah.
which is an important part of the debate. And, you can read papers all you want, but it's just so different seeing it in the field. And,
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get that appreciation for the local geology as well.
So the Western Idaho Shear Zone, your first time really laying eyes on those rocks, and they looked familiar to you. You were in the Saturday field trip video. I have the same conversation with Stephen, but I feel like doing it again right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're on top of this Western Idaho Shear Zone. You're confident that you've seen versions of this same rock, same general age to the north somewhere.
Yeah, in Yukon, the mapping we've done, we see Middle Cretaceous, so 110 million year old plutons associated with dextral shear zones, almost identical to what we saw when we were out in the field on that first day of the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I called you, what did I call you this winter? Radical or something.
Radical. Yes. Yeah.
I want to scale that back. You're an independent thinker. You are always taking notes during all of these sessions. You're off to the side, literally. You are just, everything about you is independent. Are people listening to you here? Do you feel like you have a role that you didn't have a few years ago, or more than a few years ago, with the ribbon continent model?
I think everybody listens. And so, am I being listened to? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that anyone in there is avoiding debate or discussion or data. They're not avoiding it. Listening is one thing. We all have our own set of blinders, and trying to fit the data into your world model is what we're all trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can just move people's model a little bit at a time, that's ultimately how science evolves, right? It's very rare that science evolves in a massive leap. It's incremental, and so these kind of meetings are really important. But nobody expects, and I don't expect, people to walk away from here with a totally changed perspective, and my perspective is changing as well, but incrementally.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We need a couple questions from you about Stephen, especially since he was on 2 of the letters this past winter, and I'm going to stall for you. You might miss your whatever we're having tonight, but you got 5 more minutes?
Yeah, I've got a few more minutes.
Can you give us a couple of examples of possible things that you are light bulbs, minor light bulbs that went off, or awareness of things that you didn't have before the conference?
Well, I've interpreted these Middle Cretaceous plutons and their associated dextral shear zones in a very different way from the way Basel has interpreted the rocks here. And my interpretation is that we had oceanic lithosphere subducting to the west beneath these very rocks. And I think I found it quite compelling, the relationships we've been shown here. And I would be remiss if I didn't start thinking maybe I have to reconsider my my subduction model.
Really?
Yeah, I'm. There's, in my worldview, so the subduction model isn't absolutely necessary to resolving the paleomagnetic dilemma. Okay. And so I have to sit back and say, do I really need west dipping subduction in the Middle Cretaceous, or is there another way to do it that might better mesh with what's being shown here?
Has the tomography of Karin Siglock or Johnny Wu factored into that rethinking?
Yeah, I mean, one of the topics we've been on is why now for this meeting, and has there been a change in attitude about the paleomagnetic data? And I think the tomography has something to do with that. So these tomographic models show that where subduction was taking place was probably quite a bit south of where geologists have been putting it, based on the current location of terrain. So I think that's opened the door to people saying, well, maybe we have to go back and reconsider the paleomag. So absolutely.
David wonders, how has the Great Terrain Wreck orocline been received at the conference?
Yeah, nobody mentions the nobody mentions the terrain wreck. That's still a leap too far for most people, I would say. Yeah.
Except Karin, she says it's a nice match with.
Yeah. So Karin Siglock's model, based on the tomography, shows what happens with her is she has a subduction zone which has to shorten.
Yeah.
And so what that suggests is that the arc at the surface has to buckle. And that fits very nicely with the timing and the location of where I think the terrain wreck took place. Karen and I differ slightly on what we think was involved in that buckling, but overall, her models and the terrain wreck work very well together.
Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing what supper is, because I think I'm going to miss it entirely, but that's totally fine. I'm a big boy. We've been eating every 4 hours on the
I know.
hour.
I'm like, oh my God, do I have to eat again? Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
Okay. Thank you, Nick.
All right. Always a pleasure. All right. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, that kind of worked, I think. And thanks to Stephen, who's right there heading up the hill to the dining hall. I'm totally full. I could skip a meal and just be fine. Let me check my battery levels. 60%, 50%. Oh yeah, we're doing fine. And I will always, of course, watch the replay of this and make sure that I feel comfortable with the quality of the video and audio stream. But while I'm still here, I think we should think of this as the last report that I have, the last live report. I started to edit the Saturday field trip that I filmed 4 days ago, and there's good stuff in there. I'm very pleased with that, but I don't think that's going to be posted for a while. So let's consider this kind of a wrap up for the live thing by answering more of your questions. I'm happy to repeat things if you like. If you didn't catch names, I think once I'm done at some point tonight, I will type in the names of every guest that arrived here so that you'll have that, watch that in replay or whatever. I'll probably even type in the chapter names so that people can skip to the individual folks. I have no idea if it was helpful to you. Was it rushed? Probably. But as I mentioned to the group, I just wanted to put a human face on this conference. And in addition to just staring at me and listening, yeah, we got thunder now. That's kind of fun underneath a pine tree. Very good. Questions about the Penrose Conference, about the future, about GSA? I'm going to share one thing. I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to share it anyway. Why not? In May of 2024, there will be a joint section meeting in Spokane, Washington, hosted by Eastern Washington University, and that conference will be held in downtown Spokane. It's the first time that a GSA section meeting has been held in Spokane since 1989, when I got my first job from Bill Hart in Miami of Ohio. So I'm nostalgic, and I'll probably talk about that 75 more times between now and then. But the GSA president said, can you give me something specific to think about how we can improve our outreach as Geological Society people in our organization? And I said, yeah, how about this? How about we designate 2 or 3 of the sessions next May at the joint Cordillera Rocky Mountain section meeting and live stream them for free. You want to invite people to watch and have me promote it the whole time? Maybe you'll have 2 Ice Age flood sessions with brand new Ice Age flood research. And on the heels of all the stuff we're doing this winter with Ice Age floods, how about you live stream it? How about you give it away for free? And I'll bet you the response will be huge, Chuck. And I'll bet that if you're concerned about giving something away for free, I'll bet you could figure out a way to raise a bunch of money of people just feeling like they want to support GSA for doing more of this sort of thing. Because for right now, and I was feeling a little too cocky, those talks for the last 100 years of GSA are under lock and key. Nobody's invited. And even during the pandemic, when there were virtual GSA conferences, they were filmed and still not broadcast anywhere. And even as a GSA, I can't even find the replay to watch it. We'll see if he's really serious about changing a specific example of how something could have to hire a very simple film crew. They would need to know the most basic about YouTube live streaming or whatever live streaming. I would hope it would be whatever. All right. So, or open the doors for free for a morning. If a bunch of you want to come to Spokane and sit in and listen to these talks live, I don't know. Okay. I'm scrolling back, looking for uppercase before we quit. Maybe I will catch the last 15 minutes of supper. Cliff, is the entire dream team there? 2/3, Bob Miller and Stacia Gordon. But Mike Eddy just had a second baby. Mike and his wife back in Indianapolis had their second baby. But I have been hearing from Mike Eddy, a portion of the dream team recently. Probably premature for me to mention this too, but why not? Mike Eddy is putting a new proposal into the NSF to work in Alaska. And he has invited me to be part of that as well. So if that gets funded, I'll be doing a lot of new thinking about the Alaskan tectonics, and a couple of the Cracker Jack young people who are Alaska people are adding to that excitement. So possibly down the road, I will be thinking a lot and learning a lot about Alaska tectonics with you. Why are they called Penrose? I don't really know. I don't know the history of that. I always get mixed up with Joseph Pardee, who donated, his widow donated a bunch of money. Maybe that's this America. That is given at this coming October in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I think they've already announced the Penrose Medal Award winner. And Brett's got the Penrose right before he died back in 1979 or something. So I understand the confusion. This is a Penrose conference, but there's no medal associated with this conference. Branding could be done a little differently, probably. Mike, how will any consensus be communicated to us? Action items, agreements, etc. I don't think that's the framing of this. You know, Mike, maybe you saw the last winter's live stream, and I had this 1 to 10 scale. 1 in the scale means you don't want anything to move north. 10 means you want crazy amounts, 3,000 kilometers of northward transport. Full score, 10 plus of Baja, BC. No one was forced to write their number down when they walked in here, and nobody's going to be forced to say if their number's changed. And so the framing of your question, I appreciate it, but I don't think there's any sort of, I don't really know what kind of requirements are necessary when you like report back to the people who, I don't know what Basil and Stacia have to do to report on the success, quote unquote, of this conference and what it looks like. And maybe at one point that's written up, and maybe I'll share that somehow. Carla, is this open forum for the section meeting an idea you've proposed to GSA and involved members? Well, I proposed it to the open forum. If you mean live stream, yeah, I didn't even have the idea before the middle of the conversation with the GSA president, but he's got a million things on his plate, so I have no idea if that's going to happen. But I was just trying to think of tangible, easy things that could be done in just a testing form. It doesn't have to be some sweeping changes. Just like, what do you call that? Like if you just try something like a little trial test just to see if there's a name for that. I can't think of it. It could just be one session in Spokane just to see if it works. And I don't know, maybe that means, maybe I would ask GSA, would you give me permission to live stream a bunch of talks and show them that way? Maybe I would resort to that if there's just no action on that. But it's always bothered me that to attend a Geological Society of America meeting costs a fortune, and annual membership dues. And I understand you need to keep an organization going. You can't do it for free. But it's time for whatever. I'm out of place here. Forget it. And the taxpayers fund it all, but whatever. Let's not get into that. Pilot program. That was what I was trying to think of. Yes, thank you. 3 more and we're done. Looks like we've been buffering on and off. I'm fed up with, I need a better place to put the dish. How much more space do you need, Elon? How much is geology held back from money funding issues? I don't really know. Since I don't do research and I don't apply for grants and I don't have to do that stuff, I don't really know. I wish I knew. I will say, this is off the record without names, I will say on a positive note for at least Americans, the few Canadians who are here, not Stephen, but a couple other Canadians that are here, have said to me, it's nice that the American geologists are funded and can pursue these topics out of pure curiosity and scientific advancement. And apparently in Canada, there's so much emphasis on mineral deposits and economic geology that it's much more cumbersome to pursue things out of pure interest. And I don't know about the Mexican situation, but apparently the nationalities involved have very different views on, again, I'm speaking out of turn. Stop. And I'm watching a replay right now of Sarnav for some reason. Am I still live? Hang on. Am I still live? Are we 5 by 5? Why am I watching a replay of this while I'm still live streaming? Okay. A toast to you. Thunderstorm looking like sky, so it's probably good for me to sign off. Here's to you and your health. Here's to the health of your parents, grandparents, your children, and your grandchildren. Here's to the health of everyone in your community. And here's to continuing to learn together. This whole Penrose, this whole Penrose reporting thing is just another experiment. They're all experiments, it feels like. But I like trying new things. I like pushing things to a certain degree, and I back off when I'm scolded. But in this case, I feel like I've walked the fine line between trying to involve you in this conference without violating the requirements of what makes a successful Penrose, which is it needs to be behind closed doors and there needs to be these free flowing discussions without fear of ramifications somehow. And if I was naming all sorts of names with you and telling these stories the way I really want to tell them right now, this is a big audience and it would get back to them somehow, and then their idea is circulated and they've lost chance to, it gets all complicated. And I don't want to violate that trust that has been earned because of many of these efforts. So here's to us. Okay. Please look for at least one more Penrose related video. It will be a recorded video, probably called something like Penrose Conference Field Trip, Western Idaho Share Zone. That's coming sometime in the next week. Possibly one more live stream if I get real excited, but otherwise I feel like we're maybe where we need to be. 1 hour and 40 minutes. Okay, that's plenty. Thank you. I love you. And goodbye from Western Idaho, McCall, Idaho, USA. Goodbye. All right, you're still here. The rain has begun, but let's swing you around just for fun. Here's the setup. Oh, it's really starting to come. Well, maybe that's more wind than rain. Hey, Elon Musk, look at the size of this field. That's not enough open sky? I understand there's a few trees here, but that's not enough for you? Okay, well, I really want to swing you around to show you the grounds. So let me just move the, how's this going to work? Oh, it's rain. Daddy was smart to get set up under a tree. And that is what's called lightning and thunder. So maybe I should jump on top of the tree. Oh God, can you hear that? Hey, let's get this thing to go viral. Let me get a golf club, climb on top of this pine tree, and get electrocuted. And somebody will find this, put it on YouTube as